In this video, we will discuss how to perform DLCO testing with Ascent cardiorespiratory software. This video presumes that the system is sufficiently warmed up, calibrated, and patient information has already been entered. After entering patient information and selecting the Begin Testing button, the DLCO test screen can be accessed from any other test screen. To select the DLCO test, click on the DLCO test icon within the Test Queue section of the screen. At any time during the test session, you can manually enter the patient's hemoglobin or carboxyhemoglobin in order to get a corrected DLCO value. To enter these values, select the manual entry icon in the upper right of the screen. Next, click on the drop-down arrow for blood. Enter the patient's values and select Save. These values can be entered after patient testing is complete as long as the patient file has not been marked as completed when going back to the home screen. Before performing the first DLCO effort, a gas calibration needs to be performed. Make sure all gas tanks are turned on. Insert the umbilical clip into the calibration port of the Platinum Elite or Ultima system. Next, select the Gas Cal button at the top of the screen. A gas calibration will be performed. A successful gas calibration will be noted at the bottom of the screen in the yellow bar. Insert the flow sensor into the head of the system and attach the umbilical clip to the flow sensor. Have the patient place their lips tightly around the mouthpiece, place nose clips on, and instruct the patient to breathe normally. When the patient is comfortable, select the Start button in the upper left. When you select the Start button, the software will analyze the end-tidal gas concentrations of the patient's first 3 or 4 breaths to verify there is minimal carbon monoxide and methane in the patient's exhaled breath. This is important to monitor when repeating a DLCO effort. If you do not wait long enough between efforts, there may be residual carbon monoxide in the patient's lungs. During this initial breathing period, only the quality control gauge in the lower left is active. There will be no trace on the volume time graph. Some patients may require only a couple of minutes to wash out any residual gas, while patients with COPD may require several minutes. Once the system sees that the level of methane is at acceptable levels, the top half of the quality control gauge will turn green, and the volume time graph will begin to trace the patient's tidal breathing. For purposes of this demonstration, the speed of the video will be slowed down while we narrate the different maneuvers of the test. With the tidal volume displayed on the volume time graph, the software is waiting for 3 stable tidal breaths. Once it collects 3 stable breaths, the graph will display a red dotted line indicating the average end tidal point. Next, have the patient empty their lungs by performing an unforced exhalation all the way out to residual volume. While the patient is exhaling to RV, select the Next button in the upper left of the screen. Selecting Next will automatically close the distal piston in the system head and open the demand valve only after the computer sees a plateau. For those who want more control of the system, or for patients who do not necessarily follow directions, you can also select the Next button once you see a plateau on the volume time graph. This will help ensure the patient reaches residual volume prior to closing the distal valve. When the patient reaches a plateau and the distal valve closes, the volume time graph will display the inspiratory volume target on the volume time graph. Immediately have the patient take a rapid deep breath in to total lung capacity. The ATS recommends inhaling at least 90% of the patient's largest previous vital capacity. Once the patient reaches TLC, or the system sees an inspiratory pause, the lockout period begins. Have the patient relax against the closed shutter. Also during inspiration, the quality control gauge in the lower left will display the percent of vital capacity the patient has inhaled. Once lockout begins, a countdown timer displays the seconds until lockout is over and the patient can exhale. When the volume time tracing reaches the vertical red dotted line, lockout ends and the patient valve reopens. Immediately have the patient exhale quickly. The effort will automatically stop when the software detects a plateau. The system will analyze the exhaled gas sample and display the values on the data grid. Now let's watch that same effort in real time after selecting the Start button.
Measuring end tidal gas concentrations. Waiting for stable tidal breathing. Exhale to RV and press the Next button. Deep breath in. Lockout, hold your breath. Quickly exhale.
Once the effort is complete and the test data displayed in the data table, the effort ends automatically and the patient can come off of the mouthpiece. Before repeating the effort, make sure enough time has elapsed for the lungs to clear any residual test gas. To repeat the effort, insert the umbilical into the calibration port. Perform another gas calibration. An effort should be started within 2 minutes from the end of the gas calibration. Replace the umbilical into the prevent flow sensor. Repeat the test steps by clicking on the Start button. Once an effort has been performed, and throughout testing, test data can be reviewed for quality. If the effort met the ATS and ERS criteria in the quality control gauge, all 4 sections of the gauge will turn green. Parts that did not meet the criteria would turn red. A valid effort will have a dot at the top of the volume time trace. If the dot does not appear at the top, the patient may have inhaled before the distal valve closed, therefore inhaling room air with the DLCO gas. If this occurs, the test must be repeated. If the effort was acceptable according to the ATS and ERS standards, a green check mark will appear in the ATS column for that effort. And if the effort was acceptable, the software will automatically select it for inclusion in the final test data by placing a check mark in the selected column. If an effort was not acceptable, the ATS column will have one or multiple colored balls. Each ball represents an error, and hovering your mouse over each ball will display the error. Each individual effort will get a test grade according to the standards as displayed in the DLCO grade column. Efforts should be repeated until you have at least 2 repeatable efforts, or a maximum of 5 efforts have been performed. When 2 efforts are repeatable, which is 2 standard units or 0.67 SI units, and they are acceptable, a repeatability message will be displayed on the screen. The 2 efforts that are repeatable will have a green outline around the repeatable values. To manually select or deselect an effort for inclusion in the averaging of data, click in the selected column to add or remove a checkmark. Place a checkmark in the report graph column to indicate which representative graph to display in the final report or physician review screen. By clicking on the ATS scorecard icon in the upper right, you can see details of each effort and how they compare to the ATS standards. Green balls indicate ATS standards were met. Red balls indicate the area that did not meet the ATS criteria. While usually not necessary, to learn how to adjust the washout and sample collection volumes for an effort, consult the Ascent operator manual. Once all DLCO testing has been completed, click on a test icon on the right-hand side to continue testing, or click on the home icon at the top to return to the home screen. Thank you for watching this video. For technical questions on DLCO testing, contact technical support at 1-800-333-4137 or email us at support@mgcdiagnostics.com.